Chapter 22, R.A.F. Staff College Bracknell. The R.A.F. Staff College was accommodated in an old country house at Bracknell, 3 miles from Ascot Racecourse in Berkshire. The college was at park-like grounds just outside the, then, small town of Bracknell, which is now developed as one of England's new towns. In 1958 it was a very pleasant area in which to live. We were housed in a very adequate married quarter overlooking the commandant's residence, who was Air Vice Marshal Sam Elworthy, with whom I had served under at Maham in 1946. When he was a group captain. His deputy was Air Commodore Jamie Gordon Finlayson, a sort of Churchillian character, including the inevitable cigar. We on the course, rather unkindly nicknamed him the poor man's Churchill, but he was, however, a great character and very enjoyable company. Underneath the surface he was a very gifted officer, especially as a student of military doctrine. It was he who had brought me the sad news of Roger Porteous' tragic death, when I was in Trieste. The rest of the college staff comprised of several group captains and a large number of wing commanders, who formed the directing staff. DS. There was also a small administrative staff, plus supporting camp services including a number manned by civilians. 96 officers were on the course and they came from all branches of the R.A.F. There were also officers from the Army, Navy, Civil Service and a number of overseas students from the American, Canadian, New Zealand and Rhodesian Air Forces. It was indeed a wide cross-section of service representation, thereby greatly enhancing its range of experience and expertise. The course was a year long, split into 3 terms, with the students being divided into groups and each group divided into syndicates consisting of 6 students, with 1 member of the DS assigned to each syndicate. The aim of the college was to produce trained staff officers who could aspire to the highest ranks in their respective branch. Successful completion of the course was recognized by the award of the symbol PSA, a very important symbol to have after one's name. The course was divided into the various phases of study. Firstly, the student was tutored in how to think logically, marshal facts and then write service papers accordingly. Lecturers of a very high level, both from service and civilian walks of life, afforded information, opinion and background on all matters affecting service studies. Thus, during the year the staff college graduate was provided with an extremely comprehensive and interesting background designed to turn him into a knowledgeable officer. Lectures in my year included Lord Mountbatten, then Chief of Defense Staff, Commanders-in-Chief of Air Force, Army and Naval Commands, civil servants employed in government departments affecting the service. We also heard from the Secretary of the Trade Union Council, Employers Confederation and former ambassadors from areas of special military interest at the time. In addition to the studies and writing papers, there was a considerable number of discussion exercises within the syndicates. Finally, and of special interest were visits to service and civilian establishments designed to give the students first-hand experience of what was happening in the field. Obviously, to the aspiring career officer, as I was, the year at the college was of great educational benefit. The wide spectrum of experienced students brought me into contact with fellows who had been involved in all the various tasks and roles of the service. As we were all of senior rank, squadron leader and above, most having held some form of command, to be able to spend a year together talking of one's experiences was quite invaluable. Of considerable long-term importance was the fact that after the course, the students all scattered back to their various countries' units and commands in their respective services around the world. One, therefore gained almost universal personal contact in all the spheres of activity. Having formed such close associations and friendships over a full year meant that these contacts proved invaluable in the future. We had worked, toured around, socialized and played sport together, and these many activities could not be assessed too highly, in terms of comradeship. It was against all this background that we spent our year at Bracknell. After the euphoria of my year in Australia and beyond, the change of lifestyle was to be somewhat dramatic to say the least. Firstly, we were reunited as a family, after the 11 months of separation. Secondly, we had a comfortable married quarter in a lovely part of England, and thirdly, apart from the short visits to the college, I was home every day. We were now able to enjoy a stability unknown to us for the past 2 years. As a bonus to all this, we were close to so many beautiful and interesting places. Windsor, Eton, Reading, the Thames Valley towns of Maidenhead, Henley, and many others, all within a short drive. London itself was only a 30-minute train ride away. The students' wives also had a very good social life, with many activities and visits arranged. There were also a number of sports to be played on the camp, where tennis and squash courts were available and even a croquet lawn. Gladys made many good friends to shop and go around and about with. In addition, Valerie had settled into a local school and was also much in demand as a babysitter, earning herself extra pocket money. She also made many friends with girls her own age. We were fortunate to have as close neighbors, Lieutenant Colonel Bob Gotchi of the United States Air Force, who was the DS, and his charming wife Albaros, and their 6 children. They were lovely family and we got on famously with them. Amongst the students and staff were some who have remained lifelong friends. Group Captain Alan Deere, the New Zealand Battle of Britain fighter ace, was my group director. Squadron leader Derek Flintoff, R.A.A.F, Wing Commander Norman Geschke R.A.A.F, now the Victorian Ombudsman, and many R.A.F students are but a few whose friendship I still enjoy. Some regrettably have passed on, but our days together at Bracknell remain fond memories. What I have written above will, I hope, paint a picture of what it was like to spend a year at Bracknell. Now I would like to take the reader through the year, with its ups and downs in as far as I was concerned. It was certainly a year of highs and lows, a Jekyll and Hyde year. The euphoria of 1957, with its endless stream of travel, adventure and excitement, was exchanged for an entire somersault of lifestyle. I really don't think I was mentally ready for Bracknell. Naturally, I was pleased to have the opportunities the college could offer, in the long term, but in the short term I felt oppressed by it all. I was one of the big crowd of men, most of whom I held command and authority of one sort or another, but few had been through the heady experiences I had recently undergone. I was now just a student, with no authority and no responsibility for anything, other than my own work. My very limited academic background meant that all the paperwork was a rather boring grind. I enjoyed the lectures, from such a wealth of experienced men. The visits, which were almost nil at first, were very welcome breaks when they came. The DS were a varied bunch, some of whom I liked, but many I thought to be too dogmatic. At the time I was there, the nuclear deterrent was the be-all of everything. Whilst I agreed with the deterrent in principle, my personal involvement in development of the weapons gave me a realization that there was another side to it all. I was convinced that no sane person would ever use nuclear weapons, because as I saw it, these weapons would not solve many of the world's military eruptions. My service alongside the army had also enabled me to see the soldier's viewpoint. I tried to point out to my DS that we would be much more likely to use combined services to go to conventional type wars. Later on I wrote my main thesis on this view. It was my first DS, a confirmed deterrent advocate, almost heresy. Fortunately, I still have that paper, and when I read it now, I realize that what I saw as the future development of the armed forces has proved correct. After battling through the first term, I was by no means sure that I would pass the course. However, few people fail staff college, but it is the degree of success that is all important. The student is completely dissected mentally and the result is recorded in the final report. One interesting exercise in the first term was called Sea Adler, Sea Eagle, a staff appreciation of the Battle of Britain, through the eyes of a German Air Force officer. All the relevant facts leading up to the battle were studied and the staff college student had to come up with a conclusion and recommendation on what the Luftwaffe should have done. The correct solution was that the Germans should have concentrated on destroying the radar sites, rather than the airfields. Had they done that, the Battle of Britain would probably have been lost by Britain. Of course, the purpose of the paper was to provide a first-class appreciation with a convincing argument whatever you recommended. We had some leave at the end of the first term and went up to Wales, which was a very welcome break. My group director, Al Deere, had told me that it would be a struggle for me to pass, but that I had worked extremely hard to, as he put it, keep my head above water. I realized that it was going to be a tough year. The second term was a similar struggle, but punctuated by more frequent visits to various service and civilian establishments. Naturally, the Air Force bases were prominent, but we did have a visit to the huge steel mill at Margam in South Wales. We also visited a major daily newspaper one evening to see the next day's paper being prepared and printed. Another visit was to Salisbury Plain to see a major weapons demonstration which included air attacks, airborne drops of parachutists and tank maneuvers. A visit was also made to Londonderry in Northern Ireland, when it was without the present IRA troubles. We stayed at the naval base, where we were given a presentation on naval warfare and in particular, the use of submarines, and the defense against them. We went to sea in a destroyer to watch an anti-submarine search and attack. On these visits there was always a strong social flavor, both formal and otherwise. There were so many really good chaps on the course that the informal social side was a really marvelous break from the tedium of paper studies. This term concentrated on the offensive aspect in the employment of air forces. One exercise involved an in-depth deep study of a possible nuclear strike, which included detailed targeting against our potential enemies. It was indeed a very revealing exercise on the devastating potential of a full nuclear strike. At the end of the term Aldir told me that I would get my PSA but that I was not likely to become Chief of Air Staff. It was a great relief to learn that my fear of failure had now disappeared. The term ended with a 3-week tour of Europe, to visit R.A.A.F and United States Air Force bases in Germany. We traveled in several coaches through France into Germany, stopping in Paris overnight and visiting NATO headquarters at Fontainebleau. After visiting 2nd ATAF headquarters in northern Germany and the R.A.F operational base at Wildenrath, we traveled to spend an afternoon and evening at the World Fair. It was a marvelous 3 weeks trip, full of interest and lots of hangovers to go with it all. The tour had been very well organized in every way and was the highlight of the year's visits. On return we were to have a 3-week summer leave and that was a real treat. We spent most of the leave at Bracknell apart from another trip to Carnarvon to see Gladys folks. Bracknell was a lovely place to be in summer on leave, as we were able to enjoy the sports facilities on the base and travel around all the well-known spots in the area. We were also able to visit many old friends in the London area. With the worst of the course behind me, I enjoyed the third term better than the previous two, especially with the fear of failure having been removed. During the final term there were more visits, mostly to fighter establishments, as we were in the air defense phase of the course. One memorable visit was to R.A.F Bawdsey, where Britain had its first radar defense station. It was a very historic place, amongst which are the aerials that formed the first radar installation. They played such a vital part in the Battle of Britain. These still stand proudly directed towards France. Looking at them brought back memories of those stirring days in 1940. The course came towards its close and thoughts turned to the end of course postings. We were allowed to list 3 choices in order of priority, for Air Ministry personnel staff to consider, with, of course, no guarantees. Most other people thought that I was long overdue for a posting to Air Ministry in London, as I had never done one. I dreaded this possible outcome and discussed it one evening with the civilian barman in the mess. He was considered a fountain of knowledge in such matters, after his long experience of courses coming and going. He was pretty sure that I was bound for Air Ministry, instead of a posting to Singapore, my first choice. We had a bit of a bottle of champagne on the result. The postings were placed on the notice board, where we had all crowded to learn our fate. I read down the list and my heart leapt. Squadron Leader G. Bates to HQ Far East Air Force, Singapore. I couldn't believe my good luck and raced home to tell Gladys and Valerie the good news. They were, of course, thrilled to bits. The champagne tasted good too. We were to travel by troop ship in April 1959 to our new posting, where I was to be on the air staff in the maritime operations role at HQ FEAF, which was based at Royal Air Force Changi, on the southeastern side of Singapore Island. In the meantime, after the end of the course, I was to carry out a few administrative duties at Bracknell, helping the base staff. I was also able to arrange a week's flying on Canberras, at R.A.F Coningsby in Lincolnshire, although I had been able to do some flying during the year, which we arranged ourselves. In addition, we were able to fly Ansons at R.A.F White Waltham, near Maidenhead, and I really enjoyed those breaks away flying. The highlight of the Anson flying was to fly a hockey team, of which I was one, to Jersey and the Channel Islands for a weekend fixture against a local team. The visit was especially memorable, as it was on the last weekend of the tourist season there. The hotel put on a big party for the various entertainers who had performed there during the season, and we had a real fun night. Amongst other sporting activities during the year was plenty of tennis, plus regular soccer and hockey fixtures here and there. Gladys played a lot of tennis all through the summer. Valerie was also proving to be a very good runner and won a number of school events. I did not play golf in those days and somewhat regretted that I did not, for Bracknell had a block membership at the famous Wentworth course. Socially, we had enjoyed a really good year, for everyone joined in many mess and outside functions. There was always the many lovely pubs to visit in the area, which we took advantage of whenever possible. One social occasion stands out. Botgocci, being an American, celebrated Halloween, which he encouraged me to join him in, wearing hideous masks, visiting a number of families on the base. Instead of asking for trick or treat, we offered our oppressed hosts an empty glass. By the end of the evening's tour around we were very nicely, thank you indeed, no houses having refused. One major highlight of the year was on Queen's birthday in June. I had taken some of the Americans and their wives to see the Trooping of the Color on Horse Guards parade. Gladys had stayed at Bracknell and was taking part in a tennis tournament, specially arranged for the day. When I got home she had enjoyed a champagne lunch, laid on by Air Commodore Gordon Finlayson, whilst unbeknown to me in London. The announcement had come through that I had been awarded the Air Force Cross for my efforts at Christmas Island. It was a great day and the celebration continued. I was very proud now to have been decorated twice. My DFC being awarded in wartime had not allowed for an investiture at Buckingham Palace. However, this time it was, and along with Keith and Joyce Bradbury, he had been awarded an MBE. We all went up to London with our children. We spent the night at a hotel, and travelled to Buckingham Palace for the investiture. Unfortunately, the Queen was indisposed with a cold and Prince Philip did the honours. It was a marvellous experience for us all and one never to be forgotten. Afterwards, we all went back to the R.A.F club for lunch. As I stated at the start of this chapter, it was a year of highs and lows, but looking back on it now, I am very glad I did the course. The Commandant, AVM Samuel Worthy, told me that the year's effort would stand on me in good stead. He appreciated that it had not been easy for me, but I had entered into the life at the college and worked very hard. He wished me good luck. I thought long and hard about Staff College over the years, but in hindsight, what Samuel Worthy told me has proved correct. I am sure, in the long term, that I had benefited from a year's academic studies. It made up for a deficiency in my life, which I have used to good effect since, both in and out of the service. There is something tangible about Staff College that stays with you forever. Whether you have a really good year or not, if you work at it, as I did, you will come out of it with a huge amount of learning behind you. You also have a circle of contacts in the service which proves invaluable later in your career and in life. It was, of course, an important factor in my eventual promotion to Wing Commander. All in all, I think it provided more pluses than minuses, although it was painful at the time. I now looked forward to my first tour as a staff officer. Because it would involve another period of extensive travels, it would be the next best thing to a flying job. So all set and picked up, we prepared to travel to Southampton to join the SS Oxfordshire for all points to Singapore.